New sobering statistics reveal the extent online harm is affecting New Zealand children. Police data released to charity Before 16 shows that since 2015, more than 2,000 children have been recorded as victims of harmful digital communications. 3/4 of those victims were female. But those working in this space say these numbers are just the tip of the iceberg and are calling for stronger laws and enforcement. Holly Brooker is an online safety advocate with Make Sense and has been offering policy support to Before 16, and she joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
From your work in this space, what is the data showing about actually the extent of the harm being done to children?
Yeah, well, I think looking at the 2,000 victims that have been, gone through the court process through the HDCA, I do agree that it's the tip of the iceberg. I hear anecdotally from so many parents stories of real harm to their kids that they're not reporting. So, it takes a lot for someone to go to the level to make the report, and I think there's a misunderstanding as well around what the process is and how we actually do make reports when something happens to our kids.
And presumably a lot of people aren't reporting because they're thinking it's either shameful or embarrassing, perceived to be, or they just think there's not going to be an outcome here anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of shame around this issue, and I think it's really great that as a society we're starting to talk a lot more about online harm, and I want to commend Before 16 for, I guess, that conversation that's now happening a lot more vigorously among the politicians and among the public, because we really need to have these conversations because young people are being harmed and we don't have any kind of legislative or regulatory infrastructure in New Zealand to actually protect them.
Well, what is the nature of the harm being done that the data is showing that we know of?
Well, in regards to the data that Before 16 are referring to, it's things like online harassment, it's things like sexual harm, it could be image-based abuse. Those are the types of things that people would go, bullying, those are the types of things that people are reporting through the HDCA.
And why is it, do you think, that girls disproportionately affected in these numbers?
Well, girls are disproportionately affected in many areas, and particularly around the kind of sexual harm space. And we're seeing that sexual harm is occurring increasingly online, and girls are the target of that. So whether through harassment, through stalking, through tracking their movements, through sending them unwanted intimate images, through collecting them from young girls and then distributing them, through creating deep fake content of girls, so turning an innocent image into a sexual image and then distributing it, girls are really vulnerable.
Data shows that only 900 children recorded as offenders, very few prosecuted. Why is it that so few cases make it to court?
That's something that I am not sure of as well, and I think it'll be really interesting to talk to the police about that to understand that further.
Yeah. Well, what do you think some of the limitations are in terms of actually trying to protect kids?
Well, New Zealand, we have really, for a long time, just neglected to do anything in this space. So we're now, we've got a cultural environment where we give our kids phones. I think school census a few years ago found that most kids have a cell phone by the age of 11, which is really young, and we don't have any legislation specific to keeping kids safe online. So we rely on two laws in New Zealand to kind of regulate the online environment. One of them is the Films, Videos, Classifications Act of 1993. So it predates the internet, and it's a legislation that helps the Classifications Office to classify content. There's too much content on the internet to classify, so that's really kind of more relevant with films and books. If someone sees something illegal online, they can report it, and the chief censor can make a decision about whether it's deemed objectionable, and they could issue a takedown notice. If that content is hosted in another country, say Russia, very difficult to enforce that because we don't have any enforcement mechanisms in New Zealand to make that happen. So we're relying on very old legislation to regulate the internet.
Okay,
we're also relying on the HDCA to basically, which that has a post-harm response. So we're just like, things are happening online. Platforms have a free-for-all. When harm happens, we'll step in and we'll try to fix that.
So a couple of things. What sort of legislation would have real teeth and be effective, and how urgent is it needed?
It's incredibly urgent. I've been working in this space advocating for change around online harm to kids for 3 years, and we've seen no change from government. We hear a lot of great positive comments from politicians, and we meet with, YouTube and TikTok and Snapchat, and there's great positive, affirmations of we want to do good things to keep kids safe, but we're seeing no action. So what we'd love to see is an online safety act that is specific to child safety with an enforcer. So maybe there's an online children's commissioner that actually leads the charge, and we have an enforcer that can issue fines or, hold industry to account when they are failing to protect our kids online. When we look at Australia, the UK, the EU, Canada, parts of America, they all have legislation that's focused on online safety and the protection of children. They have enforcement mechanisms to make that happen, and we don't have any of that. So that's a real shame, because it's leaving our kids in New Zealand very vulnerable.
It probably needs to be flexible enough, right, to be able to deal with what's coming too. I mean, you think of the last few years, last 5 years, how quickly it changes anyway. Snapchat is not that old, disappearing pictures, but then the algorithms now that are forcing content onto people's platforms.
Absolutely, it is changing very quickly. We've got, just last week, Elon Musk launched Grok, which is a kind of a ChatGPT type function, and there's been a whole lot of discussion happening internationally around the harm to young people through the conversations that kids can have with this kind of character. Nudify apps are a real problem. We're seeing school kids being harmed by their photos being taken and changed into nude images. So we do need legislation that can be adaptable. But what we need, I think, is just a strategic direction. I would love to see New Zealand adopt a national strategic approach to online harm, with someone leading the charge, with a multi-agency approach, and NGOs and experts, all working together, schools, principals, working together to focus on online safety for children.
Holly Brooker from Make Sense, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.